Hi, I'm Jim Berggren, Senior Pastor at Holy Cross Lutheran Church in Houston, Texas. This is a sermon for Christ the King Sunday in Series C, November 16th, 2025. Luke 23:33 to 43. This is the King of the Jews. He is the King of truth. He is the King of all reality. Crucifixions were gruesome entertainment for some. A nasty but regular job for soldiers, probably paid extra. Pointed reminders of the consequences, disagreeing with the empire for anyone that saw it, to make it perfectly clear to witnesses what not to do. The charges were listed on a placard hung on the neck of the crucified person or nailed to the cross somewhere close to the head or feet of the crucified. Pilate thought Jesus was innocent. His wife thought that too. The hassles that he's getting from the Sanhedrin about Jesus didn't need to be a Roman problem, but it started to look like it was becoming that. Another rotten day at the office. He sent Jesus to his death with a sign, mocking the Sanhedrin. What do you want to bet that Tiberius Caesar Augustus didn't ever get to read that sign? That being in Rome and all, quite a distance from where all the action was, wisely avoiding those filthy pilgrim crowds that were so busy. This is the King of the Jews? Had Caesar read it, would Pilate have to say something like, oops, just kidding? A little joke at the expense of those Passover animals. I'll bet you dollars to donuts Pilate was counting on Caesar never even hearing about this one. And if he did, it would go down on the plus side for Pilate, efficiently handling a minor local uprising that didn't concern anything very important. But no matter how ironic or sardonic or sarcastic or bombastic it was, one does not kid around with the empire and its head of state. The king business is viciously powerful, cruelly vengeful, and vulnerably fragile. The emperor is king of millions of people, and each one of them thinks they could do a better job. You don't kid around in a surveillance society. Even children in our world of internet know that. You are being watched because the emperor is insecure. This is the king of the Jews. Is insurrection. It is treason. It is blasphemy. And that pretty much covers all of the worst crimes that Roman citizens or Jewish believers could do. The Caesars were considered gods and divine beings. Get out of here, Pilate. You didn't really post that in public for everyone to read, trilingually, in Greek, the language of culture, economics, world trade, and the entertainment industry, those circuses. In Latin, the language of government, law, administration, and the military. You don't mess with that. In Hebrew, the language of the local indigenous majority religion, Judaism, and its several of its many, many parties, Pharisees, Sadducees, Samaritans, Essenes, Sicarii, Zealots, a list as long as your possible gender choices on the web these days. Hard to keep track of it all. Clearly, Pilate needs to take some serious diversity training classes to avoid political incorrectness here. Pilate, however, was, to his credit, equally offensive to everyone and seemingly okay with it. He was either very brave, very ignorant, or just sick and tired of the whole controversy. And of course, the Sanhedrin's upset about this sign. It made them look like fools. And Pilate wasn't about to change a word of it, even though he would likely be punished if Caesar found out about it. Hundreds of thousands of pilgrims were going to walk by this crucifixion and read this sign and see this grisly sight on their way into Jerusalem for the Passover. The joke's on them. At the trial, Pilate's only concern was his question to Jesus, "Are you King of the Jews?" Jesus gives Pilate a direct order. "You say so." Pilate is the civil judge. What he says goes. It becomes hard reality, the truth. And yet, Pilate is obedient to Jesus when he says so on the sign that everyone will read. "This is the King of the Jews." Pilate said so, and he's the governor of Judea. Luke is the king of double entendre, the way he writes. Mockery combined with serious confession of faith. The Sanhedrin had no choice but to lead the mocking crowd on Golgotha to avoid repercussions and pilgrim rebellions and Roman retaliations. For their participation in an unclean crucifixion, they will forfeit their roles at this particular Passover. Essentially, they will have temporarily excommunicated themselves, cut off their nose to spite their face. As per usual, in Luke's gospel, the first people, the forces of evil to recognize Jesus as the King of the universe are opponents and demons, the unclean, the outcast. Even that mockery is a testimony to his power. Even his worst detractors pretty much agree. He did save others. We saw it. So now it is time for him to save himself, take over everything, like a normal, conquering king should do. But precisely because he's the King of Kings, he can't or won't save himself. This is a very clear replay of the temptation of the wilderness in Luke, the 4th chapter, 5 through 8, where the devil promises to name him king of the world if he just worships the devil. It won't happen. He's king of all, devil included. Jesus won't let go of us to save himself. I heard about a boy that was swimming, and his mom saw an alligator surface near him. She ran into the water and jammed a thumb in the gator's eye and dragged her boy out of the gator's mouth to safety. She won the tug of war, but the boy had some stitches. His friends visited in the hospital to admire his stitches and hear the cool story. But he was more proud of the fact that he was solid, black and blue, from his shoulders to his wrists from the encounter. He said, "My mom did that. She wouldn't let go." Christ the King is our King of Kings, but he is crucified, a criminal. His crime announced for the world to see. This is the King of the Jews, written in the 3 power languages of the first century. Pilate proclaimed Jesus the King of the Jews. What if Pilate was actually preaching Christianity's first sermon? What if Pilate was stating something for a first Christian creed? What if Pilate was really actually very concerned about truth and reality and was proclaiming that as accurately as he could? What if Pilate was placing himself at risk from Caesar and kind of being okay with that gamble? What if Pilate was making a confession of who he truly thought was the King of the universe? Could be. When loyalty oaths to Caesars and other rulers determined whether you lived or died. It is a wonderful, beautiful language that the New Testament people use to tell us of what happened to them because of Christ the King. Lives were turned around, called salvation. Slaves said, they're kings and priests now. People believed they were in God's kingdom, and he would not let them go. They showed that they were not victims, and to live is Christ, and to die is gain. The king who wouldn't save himself is the king of the universe. Amen.